I understand that when it comes to baseball general managers, one of the holy grail type of individuals is Billy Beane. Fans worship him. People in baseball love him. The media loves him. He had his own freaking movie about him and his system of Moneyball, dot, dot, dot. But one knock I've always had on Billy Beane is that I've always felt he used Oakland's small market status as a bit of a crutch, as a bit of an excuse for not going for it all and not being more successful come playoff time and eventually winning a World Series. I've always felt he's used that as a bit of a crutch, and I've always thought it was a poor excuse. I really have. So as the 2014 season got underway, and I started to see that the Oakland A's were again going to be one of the better teams in baseball, and that this team could potentially do something special this year, I was wondering if Billy Beane was going to do the right thing. I was wondering if Billy Beane was going to go all in and say it is 2014 or bust. I was wondering if he was going to say, screw the small market crap, screw what could happen down the road. It is now or never with this organization. Well, I've gotten my answers in a big way. You got the July 4th trade where they trade off their top two prospects in their system to get Jeff Samardzija and Jason Hamill. And you're like, man, that's a big move. The Oakland A's are definitely in right now. Even with that happening, a couple more weeks go by and I'm starting to say, hey, the A's could be the pennant winner in the AL. They could be a World Series team, but I'm not sold. I'm not fully convinced yet. They might need to make one or two more moves, and one of those moves might need to be major and significant. That's kind of been my thought process. So here we are, July 31st, 2014. The Oakland A's are sitting at 66-41. They're 2.5 games up on the Angels in the American League West. They have the best record in all of baseball. A lot of front offices, a lot of general managers would sit there and say, maybe we need to add another bullpen arm. Maybe we need to go for a back end of the rotation starter, maybe a role player off the bench or two. But we're pretty much good. We could look at our regular season success and fool ourselves into thinking that automatically makes us equipped to win in the playoffs and win a World Series. I applaud Billy Beane for not falling into that pitfall and falling into that trap and understanding that his work wasn't done yet and that he did need to make a big splashy move, one more, to really sit there and send the message from the top down to the rest of the organization that you better buckle up, boys, because it's now or never, and we're going for it in 2014, no question about it. And my God, he's going for it. He's rolling the dice and throwing all the chips in. He just traded Yoenis Cespedes to the Boston Red Sox to get one of the best left-handed front-of-the-rotation starters in baseball in John Lester. I didn't see this move coming. This is a big move. This is a blockbuster. When you talk about blockbusters, you're talking about getting a guy like Lester and having to give up somebody like Cespedes, one of your hitters in the middle of your order, one of your better power hitters, one of your real star players. That's a big move, and that's a big gamble, and that's a big risk. But if you're Billy Beane, you know that pitching wins come playoff time. And you know that you have to have as much starting pitching and quality starting pitching as you possibly can come playoff time in order to have a realistic shot of A, making the World Series, and B, hopefully winning the World Series. And sometimes to get a lot, you have to give up a lot. And that's what happened here for the Oakland A's. They gave up a lot in Cespedes, a guy who still had another year on his contract in 2015, to go get a guy in Lester who might only be there for 2+ months as a rental and then will leave via free agency. You know what? I applaud Billy Beane for doing this. This is the type of big, risky gamble that can deliver you a World Series championship. This is the type of move that the freaking Oakland Athletics needed to make to really shake stuff up and really sit there and say, we're here for keeps, boys. American League, National League, Major League Baseball, you need to watch the hell out. Now, some of you will sit there and say, why would you sit there and give up one of your hitters in the middle of your order, a guy like Cespedes who still has room for growth? Why would you do that? Well, I'll put it to you this way. Why would you sit there and do that? It's very simple. Because you're all in now. And you know, a guy like Cespedes, he's a nice player. But let's be realistic here. We're talking about a guy who's a 260 hitter, maybe 25 to 30 home runs, maybe 80 to 85 RBIs. Whereas you're talking about a John Lester, where you've seen what he could do. You've seen the type of dominance he can have in the postseason. You've seen the type of front of the rotation, left-handed starter he can be for a team, like he did for the Red Sox last year, like he's done in the past. There's no question that the Oakland A's, in my mind, had to make this move. Let me ask you this. If you're a fan of a team, like I'm a fan of the Cubs, and I'd be willing to give up just about anything for one freaking World Series before I die, would you give up your top 2 prospects and one of your young middle-of-the-order hitters in order to acquire 3 pitchers, 2 of them frontline starters that you feel will actually help you win the World Series this year, knowing that if you didn't trade those top 2 prospects, they wouldn't be on your big league roster this year at all, and that guy in the middle of the order wasn't going to ultimately bring you a World Series this year? Would you make the deal? In my mind, the answer is 100% unequivocally God fucking yes. And to me, if you wouldn't make that deal, I think you're insane. If you wouldn't make that deal, I think your priorities are messed up. Ultimately, as Herm Edwards once said, you play to win the game. And in Major League Baseball, there are 30 teams, which means that only one team is a winner and there are 29 losers. Do you want to be a part of that flock of sheep, one of the 29 teams that are losers at the end of the season, or do you want to be the only team that matters? Do you want to be the team that hoists the World Series trophy at the end of the season? I'm glad to see Billy Beane understands that that's the priority. I'm glad to see that Billy Beane understands that he has a legit opportunity to do that right now this year. I'm glad to see Billy Beane, frankly, forsaking a bit of the future and falling away from some of those small market crutches and excuses that he's used over the years to go for broke and go for it now. That's what a winner does. That's what a championship organization does. And I firmly believe that the Oakland A's may have very well themselves just become the favorites by far to win the World Series come October. Again, I applaud Billy Beane for this. He's learned from his mistakes. He's learned lessons from the past. And by God, he's not repeating them. It's now. It's shit and get assholes and elbows time for the Oakland A's. And I can't wait to see what happens the rest of this Major League Baseball season.